Welcome to Watch It Real. I'm Ira Jersey, the general manager of the men's program here at Real Central New Jersey Soccer. I promise you sometime in the near future, we'll have our intro updated. But as we get into the postseason here, as we wind down our very first WPSL and USL2 season, let me just say a couple of things. Firstly, congratulations to our women's team for making the finals in their division. There wasn't a national playoff for WPSL this year, but they made it all the way to the finals, dropping to the Gotham FC Reserves, who, kudos to them for having a wonderful season of their own, their first season under that branding in WPSL. In USL League Two, tonight we have a couple of very special guests. We're going to start right here at home with Nick Hazel. He's a defender for Real Central New Jersey Soccer, played as our six, plays as a center back, but definitely one of our defenders, a rising senior at Lafayette College, and the Patriot League Defender of the Year and third team All-American in the 2020 spring season. They made it all the way to the finals of the Patriot League this year. And I won't say who they lost to again because Nick's tired of hearing that. Nick, thanks very much for coming on Watch It Real.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for having me.
So talk a little bit about, the season that we had this year. It was obviously totally unique in that we didn't have a fall season. Instead, you guys had a spring season, and then that went right into the USL2 season. So you actually missed a couple of our first games because you were playing in the tournament, like I mentioned. What did you think of the level of play compared to, the Patriot League versus USL?
Honestly, it felt the same. Coming off of the college season and going straight into it, the level never dropped off. Like, everyone wanted still to win. Everyone competed. Practices were serious. Games were serious. And there really wasn't that much of a drop off going into this season.
Talk a little bit about kind of your aspirations. So you've played soccer a little bit now, and at the collegiate level, that's either going to wind down or you're going to continue playing, maybe. So let's talk a little bit about your aspirations. Given that you had such a great spring season and a good season with Real Central New Jersey as well.
Coming into college, I always thought after college that I would continue to keep going. And after freshman, sophomore year, I had a decent season, nothing really crazy or really stand out. And then after this spring season, I kind of got my name out there with some of the awards that I won, and kudos to my teammates for helping me with all that stuff, obviously. But then after this season, it kind of hit me that maybe I can go to the next level and continue with it. And then coming into the spring, playing with Real, I felt that I was able to still compete at that high level, and I am looking forward to trying to keep going forward.
So let's talk a little bit about your soccer journey. So you're from Central New Jersey, at least the southern end of Central New Jersey, as we define it here at Real Central. What was your soccer journey? Where did you play growing up, and what clubs, and what was the college recruitment process like? So I'll just let you talk a little bit about your history.
So I grew up in New Hope, Pennsylvania at first, and then I moved to Central Jersey in about the second grade. So from there, I kind of just played for a club team in my town, just played for Florence. And then probably around the sixth grade, I branched out a little bit and went over to Pennsylvania to find a club team. So I started playing for Patriot FC from sixth grade until senior year of high school. And during that time, we've had different coaches go in and out. And one of the old assistants at Lafayette College was my head coach. So from there, he was just always thinking hey, you can come here. It will be a great spot for you. It's a great school. And just always think about it. So basically early, since freshman, sophomore year of high school, I always had my eyes for Lafayette College.
I would think that very few people have their college choice set out that early for them. So, good on you. So, we're going to bring in our other guest in just a second here. But before we do, I just want to thank you for, playing for Real Central New Jersey this year, being one of the leaders on the team. And importantly, one of our tenants here at Real Central New Jersey is giving back to the community. And today, Nick was one of several of our players and staff who helped out at the Boys and Girls Club today, working with the youth there. We had about 80 odd kids come out and attend our clinics, and we ran some stuff. So here's a photo that you can find on social media with Nick, myself, my son, and Julia and Olivia and Steven, three of our players and our head ball retriever and my son, and Steven, our fan engagement person. So I want to personally thank you for everything that you've done for our club as well as the community here in Central Jersey.
Thank you. It was fun doing it for sure.
And we had to pivot a lot because it was hot and it was a little bit chaotic at times. So it was. Yeah, it was great to pivot. So now, Nick, hang on. I'm gonna call you back in just a minute, but I want to now bring in PJ Savage. PJ Savage is a member of the First Team Soccer Agency. He's a players agent for professional soccer players. And PJ, I had you on League One Fun, the podcast that I do for USL League One before, which was a fascinating conversation about how contracts were made and some of the very first transfers that we had within USL from USL League One into USL Championship. Can you talk a little bit about what might have changed in terms of player contracts and over the last couple of years, and if anything, has COVID affected how negotiations are going, or how players finding new clubs has gone the last couple of months?
Oh, that's a loaded question. Yeah, I mean, listen, COVID hasn't been good for clubs and for players. I mean, I think everyone is happy now that we're back playing, but more importantly, there's also fans in the stadium and sort of getting back to a sense of reality, whatever that reality now is. In terms of player contracts, yeah, it was this offseason was interesting. From the professional side and specific, obviously, to League One and the USL Championship, what we saw was a lot of teams, because of COVID, shied away from maybe signing new international players, because one of the bigger issues was, how to get these guys into the country, because, embassies were closed and there was backlogs. And so that was kind of interesting to deal with. You had guys flying to Mexico and you had guys going to Poland and, doing embassy interviews there before coming into market. So it was interesting. It was different.
Out of curiosity, where do you fall in the process? So, one of the things that we had to do for a few of our players was international transfer certificates. Is that obviously the teams do them when they're trying to get an international transfer, but do you have to wait for them before the contract can be settled, finalized, and obviously before the player comes into market, they have to and can play for a team, they have to have their international transfer done. But are you involved in that process at all, or is that just something that the teams just
no, unless a team asks for help? No, usually it's done by the club and by the federations. I think maybe I've done maybe one or two and assisted in that, but it's not something that's common. I think the big thing in the off season, sort of going back to your original question, was force majeure and force majeure language that got inserted into new contracts, and it was a buzzword in the off season. It was interesting to see how some teams addressed it. Some teams didn't.
So for people not familiar, can you let us know what force majeure means and what it means for the player in particular?
So I thought, the legal definition you could probably look up, but basically, force majeure was addendums into the contracts that allowed for in this particular case, a global pandemic, to allow clubs the ability to adjust a player's contract. And so some clubs in the league, for example, in the Championship and also in League One, had force majeure language that would sort of be specific to stadium capacities, and then that effect would have what that player would be paid on that month. So depending on what stadium capacities were, the club had the right. They chose not to do it, but they did have the right to adjust a player's income based on stadium capacity rules. And this was sort of back obviously early into the offseason, where no one really knew what COVID was going to do for the upcoming season. And so thankfully, to my knowledge, force majeure hasn't been used by any clubs. I don't know of it being applied anywhere, but that's not to say it hasn't happened. I just, from my knowledge, it hasn't.
So I'm going to bring Nick back in here in just a second, but before he comes in, as a player's agent, for players who are graduating college, they're finishing their senior year season, say in November, December, this coming year, what's the method for a lot of players in USL League Two who aren't affiliated with professional teams? So obviously, like South Georgia Tormenta's two-team, tends to promote a fair number of players up to their first team. But how do you, when should they think about and how should they think about getting in front of coaches during the off season or at the end of their college seasons when they're allowed to, and when is it appropriate for these folks to contact an agent? Because obviously they can't do it now because they're in the NCAA, so they can't register with an agent or anything like that to keep their college eligibility. But the day that they finish their last game, they're basically free agents. So what's the general process that these kids coming out of school should be thinking about contacting someone like you?
Yeah, I think it's always important to get the education. I think that USL League Two clubs have an opportunity here when they bring guys in to use their club as a way to recruit players by showing that they have moved players into the professional ranks. And some clubs do a very good job of that. Some clubs are just starting out, like yourself, and looking to bring in talent and push it on. And so there is an opportunity here where player and you guys there at Rail Central can pick up the phone and call some of the local clubs to try and allow some of these guys to go in and train for a week here, train for a week there. And that's really where, especially if you're coming from a smaller school, a smaller conference, Division II, Division III, that's where the opportunity for exposure can help by getting in front of these teams during their season, but obviously for the college guys, quote unquote, their off season. That for me is something that I would encourage guys to do is be proactive. But I also think that, USL League Two clubs, can help with that. And they can utilize, the relationships and the networks that they have within their own systems to help try and generate some of that opportunity. Now, I'm not saying it's for everyone. I'm saying that you've got to identify the players that you think have the ability to move on, and those are the guys that you want to push.
Now, I know that I stole Nick's first question, and I apologize about that. So it was obviously a great question. That's why Nick and I both thought of it at the same time. But Nick, do you have any questions, as someone who is, aspiring to go to the next level of soccer? And, are there other questions that you might ask, ask an agent once you're allowed to?
Well, before I guess getting into that, between agent and a player talking, is there for a player like myself or a USL 2 player, is it always that the USL 2 player contacts the agent, or is there ever times where an agent will reach out to a player?
Yeah, it goes both ways. Part of what I do day to day is you're trying to find talent, right? And you watch as many games as possible. I like USL League Two. I think that there's an element of better competition, especially in some of the conferences with some of the clubs. And for guys like you go into that environment, and it's, the purpose there is to try and elevate your game, right? And try and quote unquote dominate in the market that you should do well in. Some guys might go and, excuse my language, shit the bed. And if you shit the bed, at USL League Two, it doesn't look good going forward. And so if you're going into a market and into a team that you can do well in and have some success in, then yeah, it's gonna open up some doors. And that's where, looking at film and looking, especially now that we're sort of in the playoffs and different things like that, like you can find players, that you might not have heard of before, just because USL League Two allows for that option. Lafayette, Patriot League, obviously a smaller school, but with Ira Jersey or with Ira and the group there, like you've showcased yourself now into a different market, and there's nothing wrong with that, especially if you've played well and done well. It can generate other opportunities and generate interest from guys like me.
How important is things like having tape? Because obviously USL League Two does have a mandate that that every game has to be posted up on their streaming service. They which actually had some problems partway through the season this year. But we taped all of our tapes, both for tactical reasons and also to make sure that that our players had basically all of their highlights available should they want to cut their own tape. How important are those highlight tapes, and what should they be like? Like, people send me highlight tapes, and like some of them are just so long and not particularly helpful.
Yeah.
But so I'm just wondering what you find kind of works the best.
Yeah, and I'll speak for myself personally, right? Like a highlight tape for me is 4 to 6 minutes. Depending on the player's position, if you're talking about a center back, like obviously defending 1v1, aerial ability, passing range, and then set pieces, sort of 3-4 big areas of the game that center backs should be effective in, if they're going to be successful and play at the next level. I think that focusing in on those particular areas, that's where you start the process and you put your best plays in there. Obviously, no one's going to put a bad play in there. So for me, you got to watch the type of music that you put on one of those videos. And then the other side of that is, there's plenty of videos that I see every day that have replay after replay after replay, no replays. It's just the play and then move to the next play, move to the next play, move to the next. I don't need to see some guy, with a clearance 4 times. Like you lose interest.
Right. So no angle, reverse angle. I guess there might be times when you might do that if it's like some kind of really spectacular goal or something. But
I'd still say no. Don't
they
do
say
it.
no.
Like,
So just one angle, one shot. Okay.
Really got a short window to capture, something important to catch someone's interest. And so, if the music is blaring and it's loud and you got to just be careful with not picking what you think is your favorite song. Like, keep in mind, you're sending this out and this is going out. And so, there's just little things. Granted, ultimately who you are and what you capture and what you decide to put in your highlights is going to determine whether or not someone picks up the phone for the next conversation. No one's going to get signed off a highlight tape. Teams are going to go and, even agents are going to go and look at film and, different things like that. But the value of a highlight tape is you're trying to capture attention, in my opinion. So,
right. Nick, you have another question for PJ?
Yeah, I have one more. So I guess sticking on like the highlight tape, do you prefer like a USL 2 game, or coming from college, or like a little bit of both, or is there a difference between the two?
Yeah, I like seeing variation. I like seeing something different. And again, this is just me personally. I think that showing college is good, and showing USL League 2 is good. It can all be merged in. You can separate them. It's really up to yourself. But I think the big thing is, if you're going to do a highlight tape, is passing, passing ability, passing range, and then it's passing, and that can entail, playing there at Lafayette. It can include your games with Jersey, and so that, I think, being structured in your video will go a longer way, and it'll be more effective. But again, like, you don't want to overplay, certain facets of the game, because a few plays here and then move on, a few plays here, because you've got 4 to 6 minutes. Like you got to be effective with your time.
Sticking on the on this will be my last question, and unless Nick has another one, we'll say goodbye in just a second. And I hate to say that we're getting into like video production here a little bit, but is it best to again, your opinion, what do you like, but you're more experienced obviously than we are in seeing these things. Do you prefer, like, when you say, okay, here's my passing range? So someone like Nick, right, who plays as a 6 often, and I think likes to, and I suspect projects to play kind of in that role, either in a single or double pivot. Is it you start off with passing, and then you have like open field defending, and then you have maybe link up play? Like it doesn't make sense to do that, or is it better to mix in the different facets of play in your highlight tape?
I prefer it structured. I think it's cleaner that way. I think it shows it's just more structured and it's cleaner. And again, everyone has an individual preference. This is just mine. Like, I'm not saying that this is how you have to do it. It's just how I prefer to see it, because I think it flows better and I think it looks cleaner. It's starting at the video with a big play, whether or not if you're a center back, like a crunching tackle, diving head, like something that just right off the bat shows a little bit intent, and then you sort of go into it. I like that. Again, everyone's a little bit different. That's my preference, is being structured with how you do it and go through the process.
So start with the wow.
Just one play, just something that goes, oh shit, okay, like we're
Nice.
on to something here.
Yeah.
So again, it's just catching attention, and it goes, okay, cool, I'll give another 2 minutes, and you see how it all shakes out.
Nick, any last question for PJ?
Yeah, that was it.
That was it. Well, Nick, again, thank you very much for the season. That our record wasn't great on the men's side, but I think we showed, flashes of brilliance, and we stuck it out with a lot of teams, including, hey, we drew the team that made it all the way through the Northeastern Conference Finals. So, I think that shows that we definitely had some talent on the team. And PJ, thank you very much for coming on the show and giving some insight to for some of our players and other players within the league who might want to basically try to fulfill their potential as soccer players. So Thank you both.
Anytime. Thank you.
Until next time, #GetReal.